Motor starters versus motor control centers. What's the difference in what we can expect as electricians when we come to one or the other of these motor installation scenarios? Well, let's look first at a motor starter installation. The first thing we're going to have to do is put our starter into an enclosure. The enclosure is going to have to be rated for the environment that we're in. Doesn't matter if it's NEMA or IEC, it still needs an enclosure. We then also need to purchase whatever type of field device and the push button station that we're going to be utilizing for this particular type of motor control. We then need to source our circuit breaker in order to ensure that we have the correct size, and we have to wire from the circuit breaker, which would be in a panel board, all the way to our motor starter assembly. And then we need to wire from our motor starter assembly to our motor, and that would be our power circuit. We then also need to wire all of the control circuit, and that would be the overload, the starter coil, the two push buttons that are in our field device pendant, and our holding contact. So essentially, when you purchase an individual motor starter, you have to wire everything. You have to determine the size of the circuit breaker, run the wires in between, and absolutely everything is done by us. This is what we could expect for a forward reversing, maybe Y delta starter. There's a significant amount of wiring involved. Let's look at that then compared to a motor control center. A motor control center is often referred to as an MCC. Looks like this, and each one of these bays here houses a motor starter assembly. The long vertical channels are actually hinged on the right-hand side here, and they swing open, and they're actually a wireway. Same with the top hat here and the bottom. And what a motor control center is a fully self-contained assembly of source power. So up here would be where the main power comes into the entire assembly, and a series of bus bars that run through the back of the system. We can't even see them. They're in the back. And each of these, a wrapper bay or a component bay, slides in and connects, makes contact with the bus bars in behind. This is another shot of a typical motor control center motor starter. And so what you'll notice inside is that it has pretty much everything. It has the source breaker. The breaker is actually in the enclosure. It has a starter. The full starter is in there. It has a manual disconnect for lockout capabilities. It might also have some pilot devices on it, as in indicator lights and or handoff auto, stop or start. In the back, and you can just barely see it here, these are 3 slotted receiver clips. And what they do is when we push this assembly into the motor control center, these slip over the bus bar terminals in the back, much the same as a fuse would be inserted into the blades of a disconnect. So this is everything that you would have to play with then. And on this, then what we have to wire is the controls, which the manufacturer has taken out from every single one of these little terminals all over the place on our fuses, our overload, our holding contact, our coil, all of that. Instead of you going and wiring to the actual terminals up here, which could be quite a logistical nightmare, they take all these wires and they bring them out to a terminal strip. The terminal strip numbers are labeled the same as the numbers that we would see on the equipment itself. And so what the manufacturer does is they connect all of this stuff for us. This would be for a reversing starter. All of this wiring, typically, an electrician would have had to do, but the manufacturer does it all for us. And you can see the power here being taken by the bus bar clips, and there would be an overcurrent here as well. They wire all of this out to a terminal strip on the side. And then that is what the electrician will wire in to the MCC. So the field electrician brings the motor and the controls, and all they have to do is wire the controls into the appropriate terminal on the terminal strip, and they bring the motor power feed into the bottom of the starter, terminals 1, 2, and 3. So there's a significant difference between the wiring of a standard motor starter and a motor control center.